everyone. It's Chris Zafoid Carabats with SmartTalk Radio here, and I'm here with Adam Kokesh of Freedom and a bunch of other stuff. And he's going to introduce himself and talk about what's been going on lately. He had a bit of an interesting experience a couple days ago while promoting his book bomb, so it'll be at least one good story out of this. So go ahead, Adam, introduce everybody to who you are.
Well, thanks, Chris. There's a lot of different ways I guess I could approach this right now. I'm first honored, for the opportunity here to talk to you and your audience. And as someone who, the SmartCash community has gotten behind in a number of ways with my, my media production. And the big project right now is this. And I mean, before I introduce myself, I wear the shirt, got the book, got to put the message first. And so I'm always going to do my best to live by that. And I'm the guy who, when I was in jail back in 2013 in solitary, got all the best libertarian manifestos and decided to be the best rip-off artist the freedom movement has ever known and take all of their strengths and none of their weaknesses and make one ultimate red pill in book form. And I released this in 2014. It's crazy. It's been 4.5 years now that this has been out. It's been an amazing ride so far. Books are slow. I'm used to, memes and YouTube videos and status updates, and we've all, gotten to some degree sucked into that social media mentality. And I've got a YouTube channel with about 250,000 subscribers and over 70 million views. And I used to have a TV show and a radio show. And I don't care about that except as the means to the end. And the end is waking people up. The end is freeing minds. And I've done a lot of different media productions over the years. I know that those are important tools for getting people to think, for bringing people in. But at some point, you don't need that anymore. If you were to read this, and Chris, I know you get this as someone who's read this, you go like, for most people, you could read this and go, okay, all right, I get it. I'm going to go back to, living in the woods and being happy, or going back to my family life, or even if you understand this and you accept that for the time being, you have to accept a slave job and pay taxes and support a family. This will give you the awareness to go about that life with a lot more confidence in your relationship to authority, especially government authority. And so it's a real gift that you can that I want to give people. And so I sat down when I was in jail to write the ultimate red pill that would convey enough of that libertarian worldview that someone would have confidence enough in it to embrace it. Right? Because we argue with people a lot, and I've done, depending on how you want to count them, about 6 national tours now, mostly for this book. And everywhere I go, I ask people, how did you wake up? And I've never heard anyone say, well, I lost a Facebook flame war, and so as part of my concession to the victor, I had to say I was a libertarian. Or I was on Twitter, and this guy I was following came up with, it was just the ultimate meme. And I realized when I saw this one meme that he was right about everything, and I had to be a libertarian like him. Or I was at a bar and there was a guy yelling at me, and he turned up the volume just loud enough. I was able to realize he was right about everything. It's like, it doesn't happen like that. It doesn't even happen in conversation. The only times I've heard people say that it was like actual one-on-one conversations that really woke them up was when it was over a long period of time. And those are great. If you can, mentor someone, if you have that opportunity in your life to share, the complexity of your worldview and the beauty of it and the confidence that you have in it and all the various myths of authority and superstitions of statism that it dispels. Like if you're commuting with someone every day for 6 months, okay, I've heard people convert like that. But more often than not, it involves a book. Or, sometimes people will say, Adam, I binge watched your videos on YouTube for like a weekend or a week. And it's like, okay, you put that time in, sure, you'll get it. But really, the most efficient way, and for most people, as far as I know right now, and I hope someone comes up with a better mechanism than this, I really do. It's not about me with this. I don't care. I just know that right now, if you look at the freedom movement of people who care about making a more libertarian world, a more peaceful, just, harmonious, productive, righteous world in every way that the non-aggression principle application makes possible, this is a critical tool. It's 100 pages. It's easy to understand. It covers all the what about this types of questions. It's, no opinion, no conjecture, no wishful thinking, none of that crap. It's globally applicable, and it's truth. It's, there's no wishful thinking that could be argued with. It really is an airtight presentation of this fundamental truth. Free audiobook. I always got to do this in interviews, like hold it up to the camera. Free in every digital format possible, including audiobook at thefreedomline.com. But that's really, this is what I've dedicated my life to. And right now it's this book, but ultimately it's to, and I don't want to say spreading the awareness, because even that's kind of the means to the end, but to building a world that is reflective of the fundamental truths of freedom, of you own yourself as a free, independent human being. This is the foundation for ethics, the non-aggression principle. Because you own yourself, it's wrong to hit you, it's wrong to steal from you, it's wrong to kill you, it's wrong to kidnap you. It's that kind of foundation for ethics. And the more ethical world we live in, the happier everybody's going to be. So, I'm not always your fun-loving guy. Sometimes I'm, your asshole charging the ramparts and pissing off cops and making annoying videos. But no, I do it because this is what I think I can do to best serve humanity and make people happier. So to finish the introduction, if you couldn't tell from the crayons in my teeth, I was in the Marines. I've been arrested a few dozen times. My voice is shot right now because of my recent arrest here in New Orleans. If you want to get into that, it's kind of a fun story. But the reason I'm in New Orleans is we're delivering, and again, big thanks to SmartCash. And I know because Chris is the kind of guy, Chris is not like, and I think this is an important tell about people in the crypto community. If they are my brand and my brand only, or if they're, well, I like my brand and I'm betting on my brand and I think it's the best, but it's really about crypto. It's really about blockchain. It's really about how do we apply this to move humanity forward. And I've seen that in Chris. I've seen that from everybody involved in the SmartCash community. And I have to point out there are two other big communities behind this project that are in that same spirit, and that's Dash and Bitcoin.com. We've also got Doge and a few other fun sponsors in here, of course, the Libertarian Party. So, got to give all my shout outs to them for making this possible. 204,452 copies of this book being delivered right now to every mailbox in New Orleans. And so far, we're getting a really good response. It's been fun. As soon as I get off this interview with Chris, which we scheduled a day or two ago, just as I was waiting for this to start, I got contacted by one of the biggest newspapers in Louisiana. So we are snowballing here. We're having an impact. We're getting ready for a big town hall with Walter Block and Robert Evans this Saturday. So that's me in a nutshell.
That is excellent, Adam. So right now you're in New Orleans. You're getting ready to do your book bomb, and you mentioned briefly what you're doing there with
it's happening.
One book to every mailbox. So what exactly does that mean? You and your team are going around New Orleans doing what?
No. So we explored all of the different ways that we could do this, and if it was even logistically viable to deliver them ourselves. It's not. One of the things that this book makes possible by being just 100 pages is not only is it that much more accessible to people, I get these printed for under 30 cents each in China. And I love this. Where does freedom come from? Communist China. So we get these for just over 29 cents a book, and they get delivered for, it's funny, the postage is more than the printing. It's about 35 cents a book. So with all of the, actually it's less than that, but with all of the logistics included of printing, shipping from China, shipping to the bulk mailer, shipping to postal offices here in New Orleans, the postage for the actual books. You see, we have this generic print label on the back that every time it gets dropped off in a box, I don't know if you can read that, to a post office in New Orleans, they scan it and it registers as a charge against our bulk mailer. We've already paid for this. And so the total cost per book is 64 cents. It was $131,000 to get 204,000 of these done. So we're halfway through it. It's happening right now. Like I said, being a book, I'm excited talking about this to you. And I turn around and it's like, okay, a couple tens of thousands of books have been delivered here. Where's the revolution? You know, and I'm not a revolutionary. I'm an evolutionary, just to be clear. But it's slow. You know, for people to read a book, but what we're seeing so far, the delivery is working. It's getting people's attention. And so what we're doing on the street is doing what we can with guerrilla marketing to make sure that people know that this is a citywide thing. I mean, if you just look at the front cover and the back, it doesn't really say, hey, this is a New Orleans event. If you read the letter from, if you get that far into it, you'll know it's a New Orleans thing. But we're putting up signs all over town that say, what is freedom? We're doing water stenciling, which is just like, that's the coolest kind of graffiti there. It's like the ultimate temporary graffiti. There's no mess. It's not even like, I wanted to do sidewalk chalk originally, and I was thinking, you know, doing this really unobtrusively, doing this in line with the local culture. I've been in New Orleans a bunch of times. I love it here. There are a lot of good reasons to do this here. But they wouldn't get back to me on chalking. So we figured out water stenciling, which is better, which is a pressure washer over a stencil, and it washes the grime away in your pattern. And so that unless the message itself is offensive, you can't complain because it's immediately removable. If you just clean the area around it with a pressure washer, you know, it's going to weather away in you know, a couple weeks anyhow. So it really is ideal for what we're doing. But we're also about to launch a flyering campaign. And it's kind of funny because the only way that we're allowed to do this is if they're lost pet flyers. So the flyers say, formerly lost dog, read the book Freedom, doesn't feel lost anymore. Check your mailbox this week for your copy. So we're using a bit of humor to get around city regulations, and that's starting tomorrow. We're just waiting for the details for this town hall to be firmed up, and then then we're going to be really pushing, getting people out to this event, and hopefully, not only is there an enduring legacy for our sponsors. I hope SmartCash is also sponsoring that flyer, that as a sub sponsorship, if you will, and that I hope that you guys, I hope that Dash, I hope everybody gets to see some bump out of this, and I hope that we see a shift in the awareness in New Orleans, and maybe New Orleans becomes a bit of a hub of crypto activity. Maybe that's too much to hope for. Maybe there'll be a campaign to get cops to stop enforcing victimless crime laws. Like in my case, by the way, I thought of all the things that I could do to really connect with the residents of New Orleans. Experiencing a little police brutality was like way up there on the list.
Yeah.
Not something you get to experience on a sightseeing bus tour, but definitely a quintessential New Orleans experience for the locals, at least. And I was dropped on my head, within a couple hours of getting arrested. Not bad. No, I was, and this is why my voice is still shot. I did, 3 nights in jail, and I did have to make some noise for part of the time, but they were carrying me flat, facing down. And one of the officers dropped me, and I hit my forehead on a rubber mat on a cement floor. And I've had worse concussions playing rugby.
Sure.
But that was a legit concussion. Like I was woozy for a few days. So I decided to go limp and non-cooperative in jail, and just demand my rights. And I was pretty adamant about that. And part of it was like, I might have a concussion, So I'm not going to do anything until I talk to a lawyer. And I kept saying, there are two ways you can bring me a lawyer who's appointed by the court, because I have that right, or, I'll wait. You have to respect my, and they had me in a holding cell with no mattress and no food for a while. And it's like, look, just because I'm not playing your games of processing and answering your questions right now and going through your medical screening doesn't mean you still have to find a way to respect my rights as an inmate. And they lied to me so many times. One thing, well, you're not really in the jail right now, sir. You're actually in this processing thing. It's a different part of the sheriff's office, so you don't have any rights here. I'm like, I'm detained in your custody. If I starve, you're fucked. There's no way around that. Feed me. Stop being an asshole. Find a way around whatever rules tell you that you can't feed me, and give me some damn food. Give me a mattress or a blanket so I'm not on a cold cement. Like, just sorry, I'm not doing shit until I talk to a lawyer. I can talk to one person, or my business card that was on me when I got arrested. When I got arrested for reading, the one that's like the asserting your rights part.
Oh, mm-hmm.
Like, that's my attorney's numbers on the back of that. Get me that. I'll call him. And it wasn't until right before they released me, they said, okay, you can call your lawyer. Here's the phone. And it wasn't even a secure line. It was the typical, jail call your family line that's all monitored and recorded. And I was like, no, so I made them carry me everywhere. Like, I didn't cooperate with anything. And they were so desperate to get rid of me that I was supposed to go to court on Friday. One of the guards comes to my cell, opens the door.
Mm-hmm.
Sir, you ready to go to court? Oh, yes, absolutely. I need a shave and make arrangements to put on a suit. And I'd like to speak to an attorney before I go to court.
Mm-hmm.
Or, and he just said, all right, I'll see you next week, and closed the door on me. And I was like, all right, I guess that's how long it takes to do all that. But I was willing to. And as a result, I won. 100% outright, total victory, no charges, no paperwork. And I made them, even when they said they were getting rid of me, I tried to stay in jail as long as I could. And in a sense, I was like, all right, well, bring me the paperwork that shows me that. Like, they tried to pull me out of my cell, and I was like, I'm not leaving this cell unless it's to walk out of here, and you prove to me that I can walk out of here and have no other charges.
Mm-hmm.
Because that would mean this is a wrongful arrest, and I get to press charges for that against the officer. I mean, ultimately, my fantasy goal was I'm not leaving the cell until the arresting officer replaces me in it. But
yeah, that doesn't happen.
That's a multi-step process.
So I guess to step back, can you describe what you were doing when you were arrested? Because it'd be good to catch everybody up there, I think.
Oh yeah, well that's the really fun video, and if anybody wants to see that, that's a few days back in my feed on Twitter. I was live streaming on Periscope, which so far has been a great platform. If you're using Facebook, and one of the things that's keeping you on Facebook is that in a law enforcement or similar emergency type situation, you need to be able to broadcast live. Periscope on Twitter, at least check it out. It's been good for me so far. That was like one of the few things that kind of kept me around Facebook. It was like, well, most reliable that we know people are going to see broadcasting live, but Twitter's good for that too with Periscope. So please check it out. That's a safety thing, never leave your house with your cell phone less than 50% charged, or 100% if you can. It's silly, but that's, and it's not just the police state. Even with the relatively small threat of private crime, I carry pepper spray and a charged cell phone ready to live stream everywhere I go, and I figure that gets me 95% of the situations where the other 5% I'd want a gun for. And I'm not allowed to play with guns anymore since I'm a felon. Mm-hmm. But if I was to carry a gun, this is strong advice for anybody who does carry a firearm, carry pepper spray too, or a taser. If you don't have some non-lethal means of escalating force before turning to your firearm, you're putting yourself in a difficult situation where if it's the only thing available, you may be tempted, or you may be justified in shooting someone when, if you had pepper spray or a taser, that would have done the job, and you would have tried that first, and would have saved the person's life. And a bad guy might just be someone on drugs, might be someone who's deceived or having a mental breakdown. We don't want to kill people just because they're an immediate threat. So anyway, all that disclaimer being said,
it's good.
We were pressure washing the stencils, doing water stenciling on the side of the freeway on the I-10. And the funny thing is, we were with this guy Robert Evans, our friend who's a former cop, and he's like, "Oh yeah, we can do this." Just pulls over on the shoulder, and we do our water stenciling thing, and like right away, cop pulls up behind us, blaring lights, and I don't know if he had his gun drawn or not, but he had his dick out and came out. "You get in the car. You come over here. You turn around. We'll put handcuffs." And it was just like, whoa. There's like stop and go traffic next to us. We're not like he thought we were spray painting. But even if he did, even if it's like we're spray painting out of the back of a truck, hey gentlemen, hold it right there. What's going on here? Nobody move. We couldn't go anywhere. This is stop and go traffic. We're on the shoulder of a freeway where there's a 40-foot drop off next to it. We're not going anywhere. There's like no excuse for rolling in the way that he did. But he rolled in, what's your name? What's your ID? What's going on here? And actually put my friend Elijah in handcuffs right away. I ended up releasing him. Because there's no reason to hold him, but there was no reason to hold me either anyway. And when the officer came over to my vehicle, he said, I don't remember, I'd have to review the video, but he came and confronted me. I think he asked for my ID, and I started reading him the card that says, I invoke my right to remain silent. I'd like an attorney before any questioning. And apparently Louisiana is a shall ID state where legally, if you do not show state-issued ID upon demand to a police officer, they can arrest you for resisting arrest by failing to identify. That's the established legal precedent. Yeah, I know. It's it's not anywhere close to constitutional, but that's the established precedent here. And I've been warned a number of times about law enforcement in Louisiana and New Orleans in particular. And they're a different breed. They're kind of rough. And the only way to really sum it up is that they're about a generation or two behind the rest of the country when it comes to police reform and accountability. And it's the South.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of, what's really sad is that while there are a lot of black cops on the New Orleans Police Department, there are less among the state troopers, I believe, at least proportionally. You could check the numbers on me here, but regardless, in the jail, I was one of the only white inmates. It was all black inmates, and it's almost all black guards. I got to have a lot of good conversations with the guards. It's really sad, and it's hard for a lot of people to admit and to say it like this, but that the situation we have in most inner cities, but in particular in places like New Orleans, is that you have black people oppressing black people on behalf of rich white people. And just pointing that out to so many of these guards, they're like, can't argue with you there. And it's like, well, why is it still happening? In the age of the internet, why have we got just like, and I don't, I don't want to, ascribe responsibility for anything beyond an individual taking an individual unethical action. You can see how that piles up into social institutions and habits and systemic injustices like we have here. But it is worth pointing out when you see such obvious group dynamics that there's a real opportunity here for something to be done. And one of the inmates I spoke to while I was in, I said, well, what would it take you to or I said, he said, yeah, I know. And I was like, okay, good. And he's like, man, you're really interesting. I want to learn a lot from you. And I was like, there is nothing important that I can teach you that you cannot figure out for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I can help you figure it out a little sooner because I've thought it through and I can kind of walk you through it. But if it doesn't make sense to you, if you can't, and you get this, Chris, with just voluntarism itself, we don't tell you follow voluntarism because I said so, because I have a black and yellow flag on my wall, and because Ron Paul and Murray Rothbard and Thomas Jefferson and George Washington. It's like, no, it's because this is the fundamental truth of human reality. You own yourself. We'll all be happier if we stop pointing guns at each other to organize society,
Mm-hmm.
even when we call it government. And once you think that through for yourself, you get it. And he said, well, to be honest, I've been timid. And I said, well, what would it take for you to not be timid? And he wasn't sure. I said, well, would it help to know in some tangible way if everybody around you felt the exact same way and was just as afraid of speaking up? And he said, yeah, of course. Well, good, because everybody in your city's about to get this book. So maybe you can help me make that a catalyst for something bigger. But anyway, so
Yeah.
I got back to the arrest story. So I got pulled into the car, so I pulled out of Rob's truck over to the police car. They said something about, demanding ID, and I just read the card again, and they said, all right, turn around, you're going to be put in handcuffs. And I was like, really? You don't even have the courtesy to, we're not, I think you were pulled over on the side of the freeway, it's really dangerous. It reminds me of that scene in Falling Down. I don't know if this is Dave. Do you know the movie Falling Down? Michael Douglas. Guy goes postal, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the cop comes as there's a car broken down in the slow lane and stop and go traffic. And he's like, sir, you're going to have to get back in your vehicle. There's a lot of fast moving steel and glass around here. And he looks around and the cars are they're all still. No, sir, I'm sorry. You don't have a public safety excuse for this. Mm-hmm. But he ended up having to give Rob a ticket for pulling over without it being an emergency. Mm-hmm. In order to be able to arrest me for resisting arrest for a legitimate detention that was part of his investigation of the traffic stop. If it wasn't a legitimate traffic stop, it would not have been a legitimate mm-hmm. resisting of arrest. I would have been right to refuse to identify myself, I guess, in that situation. So, but I decided to go non-cooperative once I got to the next police station, and I made them carry me, and the first thing they did was drop me on my head. But I stuck with it all through jail. They could have dropped me on my head a bunch of times. They definitely, with my hands cuffed behind me, if your hands are cuffed, you can pick someone up from the armpits and it's no big deal. You pick them up from the elbows, and now you're all the weight is on the handcuffs on your wrist. So I don't want to oh my gosh, I still have some scratches and I'm still tender, from a few days ago. But yeah, that was a fun little misadventure to welcome me to New Orleans.
Well, it gave you a taste of the local flavor, I guess.
Well, when you come to New Orleans, you're supposed to have really good food.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
No, it was not even the tray rations in jail there are again a generation behind. Let's just say.
Well, that's one of my favorite things about going to Louisiana is getting the good Cajun food and going down to all the good places. Even on Bourbon Street, even in the touristy parts, you can get good food. But you go up to some of the bayou places, you can get some real good food.
No, it's there are a few cities like San Francisco and LA and New Orleans where you can't get away with serving bad food. You'll be out of business. The standards are too high. There's great food trucks and restaurants overflowing everywhere, and New Orleans is definitely outsized for its population and its culinary expertise.
Yeah, I've been to New Orleans a few times this year and definitely, feel it around my waist. That's it's a good story for when you were down there just getting started. You started off your freedom tour with getting arrested in New Orleans. Hey, that's how it goes.
Same thing happened to me last year. It was when I was starting the tour of Libertarian Party state conventions for 2018.
Okay.
And driving through Texas, I was arrested on another bullshit charge, which incidentally is I stayed in jail for 10 days, but I wasn't able to like beat it outright.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going back for an arraignment in Wise County, Texas on the 17th. And they have a bunch of felonies they could be charging me with, but right now I'm facing a misdemeanor simple marijuana possession, and I'm really looking forward to this one. Like this one here in New Orleans with the failure to identify, that would have been a fun one to challenge legally, but maybe not as important as as the drug war itself, right? And
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard to say this relatively technical line. Do you have to identify yourself to an officer under what circumstances? I mean, I'm all, my position. I'm all for, you can't use force against me unless I'm, using force against someone else or I've stolen something. Other than that, you can't. I have the right to remain silent. And I have the right to remain private. Those are absolute human rights. You cannot point a gun at me and demand identification just because you're a cop. It's funny. One of the other officers asked Elijah and Rob, well, how come he didn't give ID and you guys gave ID? And they were like, well, if any criminal came up to us with a gun demanding ID, we'd show him our ID. That's how we go. Adam's not like that. He's just not quite as submissive as that. But yeah, someone with a gun comes up to you, demands your ID. Most of the time, you should probably give them your ID. But if it's a cop and you know that you're within your rights and you know that there's a chance for accountability, stand your ground and see what happens. And that's what I did. And you might have said I lost 3.5 days of my life, but it was fun. I had some good conversations. I learned some. I won a fun little battle. In Texas, though, I have a card that's a federally recognized card as a member of the Okalavoya Native American Church, which allows me to possess sacraments of any natural drug for personal use, basically, as long as I'm not selling it or trafficking it or sharing it with people who aren't members of the church. So if we go to trial in Texas, we might have fun with that. And if we win on those grounds, and I hate to say that, there's this, we're going to end the drug war, but there's a possibility. I like taking big shots, Chris. I don't like fighting the state inch by inch, because when you fight the state inch by inch, they're going to take a mile behind your back when you're not looking, and they're just going to keep laughing at you. But if you go for the big shots, if you go for the Achilles heels, the weak points, and you apply leverage properly, I think as an individual activist, even, when you have the internet, you have fans, you have people behind you who believe in what you're doing, you can have a really big impact. And, there's a chance here with this case in Texas that if we win on the Native American church card grounds, legal grounds, if we win on that argument, of religion, that religious freedom says I get to put what I want in my own body, screw you. I even filled out your paperwork. Here's my card. It could be that anybody in America could opt out of the drug war, at least. And
that would be an interesting result.
That would get us pretty close to the end.
Yeah. And that would be an excellent thing. And whatever you feel about taking drugs personally, we can all agree that as it stands right now, the United States government is basically acting as the enforcement arm for the cartels in South and Central America. And drugs are winning the war.
Yeah, no, that's a sadly direct way of putting it. But yeah, I hate hearing the arguments for the drug war. Well, the drug dealers will love it when drugs are legalized. There'll be drug dealers everywhere. And it's like, No, there will be pot shops everywhere that are regulated and safe and controlled, and all the violence associated with dealing anything in the black market on the street just goes away. Hello.
Yeah, I mean, the mobs loved the ending of Prohibition, right? Oh, wait, no, that's why you can just go to your corner store and buy whatever booze you want. I mean, that, yeah, we have a very recent historical example that people don't pay attention to. I love the historical. Like,
wait a second, Chris, are you telling me that the average American doesn't learn American history accurately from studying in a government-run school? Really, I'm shocked.
It's almost as if the education that is funded by the government might not contradict the official government line.
It's almost as if they're trying to condition us to be obedient. I would hate for that to be the case.
I could go off on public education for a long rant, because it is conditioning. Public education was oh man, I could go off for a while, but it was designed as a way to condition farmers to be happy working on an assembly line. That was the entire purpose of modern public education. It started in the mid 1800s.
Yeah, and so Chris, I want to say, about SmartCash too, and really not just you again, but everybody who's in your field doing anything similar to what you're doing of creating a potential mechanism for overthrowing all the fiat currency-based systems. That's absolutely huge. And it's, we see there's maybe like a dozen or so of these big issues connected together. And to me, I'm lucky I get to play at the very middle of all of this, because it comes down to the awareness and the shift in the paradigm. And that's what I have chosen to focus on. Then there's the money, there's the education, there's the health, there's the trade, there's the communications, there's the entertainment. I mean, each one of these like major aspects of society, almost like hubs on a wheel or a spoke of freedom at the center. But there's any one of them could overthrow the whole thing. If SmartCash takes off, and as we hope it does, as it has the potential to do, as a currency that is well built and engineered with adoption in mind, and again, not plugging it exclusively here, but as one of those points, it has potential. If SmartCash takes off, this might be unnecessary. It might be the afterthought. We overthrow the money systems. Everybody goes, oh yeah, why are we so happy now? Oh yeah, because I guess we could have listened to Adam, but instead we got crypto right away. So whatever, or it could be that there's an education movement. There's a real actual education revolution in the United States, which says we're just not like parents going, we have the resources. We're all wealthy enough. We're all capable enough of having community-based education. We're all going to do some kind of unschooling or homeschooling or community-based schooling, but no government schooling. Done. And then I'd be like, well, shit, I better hurry up and do this thing, because in a generation, it's not going to matter anyway. Right?
And so, our government's built on this multiple layers of multiple assumptions that they've conditioned into us over multiple generations. And you take one bit of that out. I mean, you take away the money control. I mean, that's obviously my area, is the money control. And that breaks the war machine, that breaks the education system, that breaks the healthcare monopoly, that breaks all of that.
Yeah.
And these other areas that you talked about too are
militarism. I'm sorry I left out militarism and law enforcement, obviously. Two big pillars of the state as well.
Exactly. And what you're doing is you're trying to educate people in all these different areas, but if we change one of those basic assumptions in life, then all this other education won't even be necessary, because that's just how people are going to live. When people live in self-responsibility and self-reliance, and with the base assumption of freedom, it used to be that stop and show your papers was something anathema to every American. I mean, that was what they did in Hitler's Germany, right? Stop and show your papers. But now you experienced that, and I'm just looking at this map, the stop and identify states. That's like half the states in the union now. I had no idea. And then you have, of course, the near border checkpoints that they do and all of that junk. And that and that
Well,
is
the funny thing is, we went, Elijah, who I'm traveling with now, we went through a border, we drove from San Diego to New Orleans.
mhm.
And we came through a border patrol checkpoint in Arizona. We got stopped and pulled over to secondary screening because the car smelled like marijuana. It's like, I'm going from California where it's legal for recreational.
Mhm.
I could have just been like, yeah, we were in California. We were hotboxing the car because it's California and they're not playing this stupid game there anymore. Well, federal, well, you can't take that as probable cause of immediate, but you know,
Mhm.
I was like, look, I'm coming from California. It's legal. I'm going to Arizona. Here's my medical card. I'm legal in Arizona. What are you going to do to me because my car smells like pot, if that's what you're saying is your excuse, if I believe that, you know? And they said, well, why don't you go stand over there and, you know, you sit over. And so that's when I started my live stream. And when the cop came back, Border Patrol, I read that card. Now I invoke my right to remain silent. And, you know, it's funny because they said, well, we know there's weed in your glove box. And it's like, I found out later, like when we got to New Orleans, cleaning out the car, I had a joint like somewhere like hidden in the crack of the back seat that I'd forgotten about. So like that's the word. Like I drove through Texas with a joint in my back seat that I didn't know about. You know, like no victim, no crime. At some point, you got to just like people are going to expect that. You know, not our generation. Our generation is still mostly statists. I think our generation might be the one that's at that point of fear and timidity. And if we just hit like a critical point where everybody can turn around and say, yeah, me too. Yeah, I'm done with the state. But the generation coming up underneath us, behind the millennials, Generation Z, it's just going to be like, what? You're arresting me for a victimless crime? Where do I get you fired? What the hell is going on here? You know, I don't know. Sorry, I don't think so.
So
we don't play that. Wait, that's going back in time. That's a bad reference.
It's okay. Just a quick question. The card you have, did the Border Patrol agent actually stand there and listen to it all? Because I know the cops in New Orleans just walked away whenever you started reading it.
Yeah. For Border Patrol, they actually, because I was like, some cops, okay, so in New Orleans and in Louisiana, this is what's particularly bad here is not just a few bad, they tolerate always a few bad cops, you know, blah, blah, blah. It's that they have a system of protection through the courts that they have enough confidence in that they don't care if they're being live streamed. If they're not punching you, you know, they'll manhandle you on live stream. They'll arrest you for no cause on live stream, and they know that at least in those two realms, the system will protect them. The judges, the courts, they'll be fine. So
okay, so they just don't care, which that is something that will have to change.
But Border Patrol, so this is the difference with Border Patrol. Federal agents, I think they would get fired, or at least they'd have a real reprimand of some kind that they'd have to worry about in a bigger institution, maybe than the Border Patrol being many more personnel, I presume, than Louisiana State Police.
I get the idea that they want as little attention to those away from Border Patrol stops as they can get, so they're probably trained a little bit more to politicize with their.
There's that too. And I think, the other thing is I went through one a week before that, and the guy just waved me through. Like I pulled up, there's a guy right there, and he just waves. And I go, hold on a second. Aren't you supposed to ask me if I'm a U.S. citizen or not? And he goes, well, we don't do that anymore, sir. And I go, well, that's too bad, because I'm so damn American, I'm going around passing out freedom books. And that was the guy who was like, cool. And he took it. He was pretty happy about it.
Okay, that's awesome. That's great. I love those stories. All right, I want to be respectful of your time, and I know you got a meeting coming up here real soon.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
um,
I'm only dressed up from the waist up for this one, but for the next one, I have to go walk in public. So probably going to put some pants on.
yeah, we'll make sure to turn off the camera before you stand up. Two things. One, what's next for you after Freedom in Louisiana, New Orleans?
Well, it's going to depend on the response here.
Okay.
There are a few big things that I have in mind. And of course, we like to do another city. One of the things we learned, we want more local involvement ahead of time, more local business involvement. Obviously, it's great to have SmartCash as a sponsor, but when you're connecting with the city, it would be great to have libertarian-owned businesses in the city participate as well. We want to do a metro area or a combined statistical area, which is sort of everywhere, including the rural area for which that city is, in town, going into town. And now that we have a better sense of the timing, we can plan an event like a town hall in advance and have that actually like on the back of the book. Now that we know, how much it's going to cost, we know the lead time, we know that the flexibility in the budget. So I'm kind of waiting to see what the results are going to be. We've done a little polling, so we'll have a little before and after polling for the effectiveness here.
Okay.
One of the things, some people said, why New Orleans? And tons of great reasons. The main one, I think, being high libertarian spirit, low libertarian political reality, but also the issue of racism and police brutality in a place of immediate pain and suffering at the hands of the state. And I think Detroit might be next. Maybe Chicago. Maybe it's a city. That libertarianism is for rich white people, and it's the opposite, really, because and it's true. I'm not going to try to deny people. It's white male INTJs. It's those of us, and I'm while I'm Jewish, you can still put me in this category. But of people who we have the sort of nerdy analytical mind and the luxury of generally being middle class or whatever, to economically comfortable, to have the indulgence of putting the time in to study these issues. But it's because we ask the question, like, why is government fucked up like this? And we don't just accept half-assed answers. We got to tinker and we got to figure it out. But the message of freedom, I don't want to say it's for poor black people, because it is, but that's not the right inclusiveness. It's for the people who have been disadvantaged by the current system. And that is disproportionately poor black people in inner cities. And I think connecting with that audience in particular, with that demographic, might be the next most critical point of outreach for this message. I could be wrong, but I think we're going to see, after this town hall, after this first book bomb, how things go here in New Orleans, where there's a large black population that has been in many, many, many ways disadvantaged by government. So maybe the next book bomb is going to be Washington, D.C. Maybe now that we've got the basic formula down, we want to go for the one, critical big target. It might be that we do the entire country, or we start going state by state. So one way or another, I want to keep the book bombs rolling. And as you know, Chris, I'm doing a kind of limited, maybe a video a day video production right now that SmartCash is helping with. But I'd really like to step that up, and I have a business plan. And after this, I've been really focused on this first book bomb. But now that the formula's done, I could take on a more full-time media production like I've had in the past. Like I had the TV show, and then the radio, then TV, then different forms of podcasts and stuff. But it's been kind of a fantasy of mine. Although I don't want to fight. I'll never do this if I have to manage the social media distribution. I'll never do it if I have to ever touch any of the technical stuff again. But I really, my dream, what I think would be the best way for my experience, like I did a 3-hour podcast before, to do a 2-hour one, a version of that, with live calls, daily live news, live guests. And I think that would be, the best way. I'd like to bring my voice back into the conversation besides this, which really is more important. So those are the two focuses, that, and of course the presidential campaign. I'm still seeking the Libertarian Party presidential nomination in 2020. Although I know I got to go soon, but if you're going to let me say that, I have to say I'm not running for president to be president. I am running to turn the presidential election into a referendum on whether or not the federal government should be allowed to exist at all. And when we win, I'm not putting on the ring. I'm throwing in the fire, declaring the federal government of no authority, and overseeing a peaceful, orderly, responsible dissolution process, leaving us with 15 independent states, up to, or at least 5 autonomous territories, and as many as 562 sovereign native nations. And if you want to go to kokeshforpresident.com, you can find all of that. But more importantly, the main website, get the book, get the knowledge, get the perspective, get the world view down first, thefreedomline.com. And again, Chris, thank you so much, not just for today, for this opportunity to help you with your production. And I got to say to anybody watching this, share this, support Chris in this media production. Whatever independent media is valuable to you, share it, promote it, talk to people about it. Don't just be a keyboard warrior because you can't trust any. You saw the news on Zero Hedge recently, right? Nothing on the internet is real. None of it's real. I'm fake, even me. I'm not real. You got to go out in person and give people books and put up signs and water stencil. That's what's real. If you can touch it, it's real. But Chris, also, unless it's cryptocurrency, then the numbers are real. That's the exception, right? The exception on the internet.
Real.
If it's cryptography, yes, cryptography is real. And Chris, thank you so much for your support, not just within the SmartCash community, but also as a fellow activist and someone who's helped me put together a lot of what I'm working on. And I hope I can be as valuable to SmartCash and the crypto community as it's been to me.
Well, we love to have you working with us, Adam, and thank you very much for your time. And just make sure to look up Adam on his YouTube channel, on Twitter, on thefreedomline.com, and his various other places. And this was great. And this has been another episode of Smart Talk Radio. Sayonara.